Does getting the job of your dreams feel like climbing a huge wall or maybe even storming a castle? This is how I felt when I first started to look for a job at Tesla. I still remember the day that someone from Tesla looked at my LinkedIn profile and I just couldn't believe it. In this week's video, I'm going to lay out the 3-step process I followed to land an interview at Tesla. So let's get into it. Hey folks, I'm Greg Smythe coming to you from the heart of Silicon Valley. I'll be bringing you weekly videos on how to be successful in a Fortune 500 company while still having a life. At a high level, the 3-step process is to reflect. Step 2 is exploration, and then the 3rd step is focus, focus, focus. So step 1, reflection. For this one, I think it's worth asking a mentor or even getting a career coach to help you work through this stage. Having someone with an objective, kind of unemotional perspective on your current situation and maybe what your desires are for the future is really helpful. This stage really requires you to answer 3 important questions. What do you want? Why do you want it? And then what are you good at? What are your core skills? A lot of people are going to be tempted to skip this step, and it's easy to do so, to jump right to step 3 and start taking actions towards getting that first interview. But I guarantee you, if you put this work in up front, you will be much more likely to be successful once you do start to target companies. So let's start with the first 2 questions that are very challenging to answer. What do I want and why? I certainly cannot tell you what you want, and you may not even know what you want. The one thing I've realized is trying to figure this out in your head is not the right approach. Putting a pen to paper, in my experience, is the only way to really articulate what you want and why. Over the years, I've developed a writing process that starts with a moleskin where I jot down nascent ideas. I then move to a sketch pad where I flush out ideas in more detail. For the really solid ideas, I'll move to a Word document I call Thoughts on Life. In this space, I can really expand on these ideas in a lot more detail and also consider taking action towards them. Having some sort of writing process in general is a great practice and can be especially useful for answering these tough questions like what do I want and why do I want it? If you're looking for a more structured way to answer these questions, a career coach will likely have a framework that they can kind of walk you through. One closing thought on this exercise and a realization I've had recently is if I don't know what I want, how can I expect other people to know what I want? And then to go a step further, how are others supposed to support me or help me get what I want? I think most people want to be helpful, but if they don't know what you want and why, it's very difficult for them to help you. The second part of reflection is really figuring out what you are good at or what your core skills are. And this is one of the most common questions I get from people when they reach out to me about making a big career change. I've already talked about this in a few videos and will likely dive deeper on this topic. I would actually use the same approach I talked about in the first half, put a pen to paper. In my experience, sitting down and writing out 50 to 100 situations where in your career you added the most value, by doing that exercise you will start to triangulate in on what those core skills are. Doing this inward reflection is really hard, at least it has been for me in the past, and I really commend you for even considering taking this on. It's not really a process that can be rushed or forced, but it's worth the effort and time you put into it. The great news is the fun part's next, exploration, where we get to explore the opportunities that are out there. So I got a haircut. I hope it's not too confusing in the middle of this video, and it's also heating up, so I'm going to drop the best. Step 2 is exploration and is really the most exciting and fun part of this process. It's an important part to see what options are out there, and really if you're considering making a big career change, this is really why you're doing it. It's the opportunity to step back and look at a blank page. I think the best way for me to explain this stage is to share 2 of the ways that my wife and I did this during our career transition. The first was we took a trip. So we had one friend that lived in Silicon Valley, decided to fly out for I think a long weekend. That trip we visited a couple of big tech offices. We went to the Apple campus, we drove by the Tesla factory, as well as a few other startups in the area. Then we got to meet them. We had reached out to a few people through LinkedIn and had coffee or lunch with them. And then we also went to a party with a bunch of Canadian engineers. It really humanized Silicon Valley. Prior to that, the only examples we had was the show on HBO, Silicon Valley, and my wife jokingly said, "It's not really gonna be like this, is it?" Meeting people that had similar backgrounds and were doing things that we were excited about. That trip really helped us with this exploration phase to understand that this was from a lifestyle perspective where we wanted to live and that the type of work was things that we were interested in as well. The second way that we explored was that we took time off. This is a luxury that I understand a lot of people may not have the ability to do, but if you do have the luxury of taking some time away from work, it can be extremely beneficial. You know, I realized when I took off the summer of 2016, it was the first time since high school that I had actually been away from an institution and had, either a company or a university and had a real break from that. The last thing I'll share from my own personal story is that I'm really going through this stage again now. When I left Tesla in December of 2020, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And to be honest, I really thought I was just going to go work for another big tech company. But after having some time off, having some time to decompress with family in Canada, I had been thinking for a long time about starting a YouTube channel as well as starting this entrepreneurial journey. I still don't know what the final destination of this project is.
Iceberg, right ahead!
But I think that's where the joy is. And so the thing I don't want you to get disillusioned by in step 1 or 2 is that there's going to be a clear, definitive answer. The amount of anxiety when I don't have a fixed destination does seem to be getting less. It's not perfect. I still have doubts of uncertainty whether starting a YouTube channel is the right thing to do, but hey, it's worth a shot. I feel like I can hear you saying, just get to the point. How did you get the stupid interview? So let's talk about step 3, focus. The only way I can think to make this point is with an illustration. This table is really meant to illustrate the importance of focus, and it will give you the specifics of how I landed my interview at Tesla. I'll go through the different layers of granularity and talk about what helped me narrow my focus for each one. The first is Silicon Valley, and the trip to the Bay Area was really what helped my wife and I determine that it offered the lifestyle as well as the professional opportunities that we wanted. I'll bucket industry and Tesla together. Elon Musk TED Talk that came out, I think, in 2014 really piqued my interest in Tesla specifically and more broadly in climate change and electric vehicles. But you can even see at that point, there's still tens of thousands of people working in those opportunities. After a lot of reflection, I realized that purchasing was likely the most transferable skill that I had. But it did take several conversations with people that worked in the tech industry or Tesla specifically to determine that purchasing was nested with inside supply chain and that the role I was likely suited to was a global supply manager. After additional investigation, I realized there was a subset of global supply managers that were responsible for purchasing capital equipment, and this was very similar to what I was doing prior to leaving ExxonMobil. And further to that, there was only a couple of dozen people doing this at the company at the time. Now that I'd narrowed my focus to a single position, I applied to several on the company's website, and I messaged 5 people doing this job at Tesla. 1 responded to me, and this is how I landed my interview at Tesla. I realize the end result may feel anticlimactic or even too simple. I genuinely believe if I hadn't done that upfront work that I never would have got a response on LinkedIn and certainly never got the job itself. I get messages from people all the time on LinkedIn about leaving the oil industry or some other industry and coming to tech or even working specifically at Tesla. You can see how broad the ask is, and it's likely that they haven't dug into what they want, why they want it, and what their core skills are. If someone sends me a message and tells me they want to be a global supply manager and specifically in CapEx, why they want to do it and why they're qualified, that is a conversation where I can be very helpful and potentially impactful for that individual. That's not meant to be a judgmental statement because I was definitely that person 4 or 5 years ago. I genuinely hope you enjoyed the video. I look forward to sharing more stories like this in the near future. Thanks again for watching.